Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the President of Burkina Faso, and Biafra Deputy Prime Minister Dr. Ngozi Oruabueze have jointly launched Biafra's first satellite into orbit. The existence of the United States of Biafra satellite was inadvertently revealed on May 5, 2025, through a Twitter post by Dr. Ngozi Oruabueze, referencing the United States of Biafra satellite intelligence monitoring activity. The United States of Biafra had kept the satellite launch a secret, with most of its supporters unaware it even existed until the disclosure. The satellite initiative stems from a broader September 2024 Russia-led deal with West African military governments, including Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, for telecommunications and surveillance satellites. Simon Ekpa, Prime Minister of the United States of Biafra, proposed a merger with Burkina Faso to jointly launch a small sat, a small, cost-efficient satellite weighing under 500 kilograms. Due to regulatory hurdles in obtaining international licensing for satellite launches, Simon Ekpa decided to piggyback United State of Biafra's smallsat on Burkina Faso's official satellite launch. On December 10, 2024, Burkina Faso successfully launched its Burkina Sat-1 into space, simultaneously deploying the United States of Biafra's smallsat. Russia played a pivotal role in enabling this launch by offering technical and logistical support to Burkina Faso and the United States of Biafra. The satellite now provides the United States of Biafra with strategic advantages like real-time communication, disaster response coordination, and surveillance capabilities. Meanwhile, in Finland, Captain Ibrahim Traoré and Simon Ekpa are reportedly working to block a Nigerian DSS effort to repatriate, not extradite, Simon Ekpa back to Nigeria. It was a moment in history that very few expected, yet it had been in the works behind closed doors for quite some time. On May 5, 2025, the world got a glimpse into something that many had not even considered possible. That day, a quiet but powerful announcement came, not from a press conference, not through a televised address, but through a seemingly casual social media post. Dr. Ngozi Oruabueze, the Deputy Prime Minister of the United States of Biafra, posted something that triggered a wave of global interest and speculation. With just a few words referencing satellite intelligence, she inadvertently revealed that the United States of Biafra had successfully launched its very first satellite into space. The news was staggering. Most people who followed the United States of Biafra, even some within its inner circles, had no idea that such an ambitious technological feat was underway. For years, the United States of Biafra had been largely recognized for its political activism and calls for independence, but now it had officially entered the space age. And it had done so with the collaboration of another rising force in West Africa, Burkina Faso, under the leadership of its bold and unorthodox president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Let's rewind a bit to understand how all this came to be. The road to this achievement did not begin with the May 5th social media post, or even with the actual launch that took place in December 2024. It began much earlier in a series of conversations, deals, and geopolitical alignments that had been quietly shaping the future of Africa's technological independence. In September 2024, the Russian Federation, under the leadership of President Vladimir Putin, initiated a strategic agreement with several West African nations that had recently come under military leadership: Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. These countries had been grappling with long-standing security crises, internal discontent, and the crumbling of French neo-colonial influence. Seeking to reposition themselves, they looked eastward to Moscow. Russia offered something more than just military support. It promised technological empowerment, particularly in the field of satellite and telecommunication systems. For many African governments, this was more than appealing. Satellites offer an extraordinary range of benefits: real-time communication, disaster response capabilities, advanced surveillance systems, and most critically, a means of asserting sovereignty in the digital and intelligence domains. Within this context, the Prime Minister of the United States of Biafra, Simon Ekpa, recognized a unique opportunity. He had long envisioned a Biafra that was not only politically independent, but also technologically empowered. However, building and launching a satellite from scratch is no small feat, especially for a government in exile that is not formally recognized by international institutions. The financial and regulatory obstacles alone could take years to overcome. But Simon Ekpa had a plan. Rather than attempt to build a large traditional satellite, he proposed a more cost-effective and strategic solution: a small sat, short for small satellite. These satellites typically weigh under 500 kilograms and are often modular, allowing them to be launched in groups or alongside larger payloads. Small satellites are not only cheaper and faster to manufacture, but they also offer nearly the same strategic advantages as their larger counterparts. The small sat Simon Ekpa envisioned would serve as the technological eye and ear of the United States of Biafra, offering it both symbolic legitimacy and practical capabilities. The challenge, however, was how to launch it. Without access to international licensing, launch pads, or spaceports, Simon Ekpa knew the United States of Biafra could not go it alone. So he reached out to a potential ally, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the military leader of Burkina Faso, who had already secured an agreement with Russia for a satellite launch. The proposition was both simple and daring. Burkina Faso would include the Biafran smallsat in its own satellite payload. This partnership would allow the United States of Biafra to bypass international regulatory hurdles while aligning itself with a growing African alliance that was increasingly breaking free from Western influence. Captain Ibrahim Traoré saw the logic and the opportunity. He had been leading a transformational agenda in Burkina Faso, aimed at restoring national pride, reclaiming resources, and establishing regional partnerships that could withstand Western pressure. Agreeing to host and launch the Biafran satellite was not just an act of solidarity, it was a political statement. It said that African nations, regardless of their status in the eyes of the international community, could collaborate, innovate, and lift each other up. On December 10, 2024, Burkina Faso launched its first official satellite, named BurkinaSat-1, into orbit. The event was covered by international media as a breakthrough for the small West African nation. What the world did not know at the time was that tucked within that same payload was a second satellite, a smaller, unmarked device representing the dreams of the Biafran people. Thanks to Russian logistical and technical support, both satellites were successfully deployed into low Earth orbit. In the months that followed, the United States of Biafra remained silent about its involvement. It was a calculated decision. As a self-declared nation without formal recognition, broadcasting such an achievement could have triggered swift political and legal retaliation, especially from the Nigerian state. But the value of the satellite could not remain hidden forever. And on May 5, 2025, Dr. Ngozi Orubueze accidentally let the cat out of the bag. In a Twitter post that seemed more like a routine intelligence update, she referenced information that could only have come from satellite surveillance. The phrase USB satellite intelligence confirmed what had until then only been suspected by a few insiders. This revelation sent shockwaves through social media, especially among Biafran supporters who had long felt isolated, disrespected, or ignored by the larger international community. To them, the news was more than a technological triumph. It was proof that the movement was not just ideological, it was practical, capable, and evolving into something that could rival established states. The implications were enormous. First, it gave the United States of Biafra real-time communication capabilities that it had never had before. No longer would it have to rely solely on third-party platforms or foreign intermediaries. Its leadership could now coordinate more effectively, even in the face of Nigerian intelligence operations or cyber disruptions. Second, the satellite enabled surveillance and intelligence gathering that could be used to monitor military movements, natural disasters, and civilian safety across the southeastern territories claimed by the United States of Biafra. This was especially critical given recent accusations that Nigerian forces had occupied peaceful Biafran territories such as Isieke in Ebonyi State. There was also an immediate shift in how the international community viewed the United States of Biafra. While it still lacked formal diplomatic recognition, its ability to join the exclusive club of satellite-launching entities gave it a form of soft power that no one could easily ignore. Technology, after all, is one of the purest demonstrations of sovereignty in the modern world. But the story does not end there. Even as the satellite news was making waves online, another drama was unfolding behind the scenes. In Finland, where Simon Ekpa has been based, the Nigerian government, through its Department of State Services, was reportedly working to have him repatriated to Nigeria. This was not a case of extradition, which would require legal formalities and bilateral agreements, but repatriation, a more aggressive and unilateral form of state action. Nigerian authorities believed that Simon Ekpa's role in organizing and inspiring armed resistance in southeastern Nigeria posed a direct threat to national security. Once again, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stepped in. From his base of influence in Finland, where he had traveled for meetings and consultations, he is believed to be actively supporting efforts to block Simon Ekpa's repatriation. For Captain Ibrahim Traoré, protecting Simon Ekpa was not merely about personal loyalty, it was about defending a larger movement that seeks to redefine Africa's future away from neo-colonial manipulation and toward continental solidarity. This partnership between Burkina Faso and the United States of Biafra, therefore, is not just about technology. It is a strategic alignment that touches every major fault line in African politics today: sovereignty, colonial legacies, the struggle for self-determination, and the race for technological advancement. By joining forces, these two actors have signaled that they are not content with being peripheral players. They want to shape the continent's future from within, using their own tools, networks, and alliances. Looking ahead, the satellite is expected to serve multiple functions. Aside from communication and surveillance, it will likely assist in weather monitoring, agricultural planning, and even education. The small sat can relay information to rural communities, support emergency services during floods or conflicts, and connect remote areas that have long been ignored by national infrastructure. The symbolic value is just as important. In launching a satellite, the United States of Biafra has metaphorically and literally elevated its flag into the heavens. This story, though centered on a small piece of technology floating above the earth, touches on something much larger: human determination, political will, and the dream of sovereignty. For Simon Ekpa, Dr. Ngozi Orabueze, and Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the satellite is not the end goal, but a stepping stone. It is the start of a new era where African nations and movements take control of their own narratives and destinies. The world will continue to watch closely. Some will dismiss it as symbolic, others will label it provocative. But for millions of Biafrans, it is a beacon of hope. And for Africa, it may well mark the beginning of a technological renaissance driven not from Silicon Valley or Brussels, but from Ouagadougou, Lahti, and the heart of Igboland. As the news of the secret satellite launch unraveled across the digital landscape, political analysts, intelligence agencies, and even mainstream global media outlets began dissecting every detail. The fact that such a bold geopolitical move was made under the radar and only accidentally confirmed through a social media post by Dr. Ngozi Orabueze revealed a great deal about the discipline and strategic planning within the United States of Biafra's government in exile. But it also made something else abundantly clear. The Nigerian federal government had been caught off guard, and it now faced a new kind of challenge, one it had never anticipated. Space-based intelligence surveillance conducted by the very movement it had spent decades trying to suppress. Inside Aso Rock, Nigeria's presidential villa, there was confusion and fury. The Nigerian Intelligence Agency and Department of State Services had been closely monitoring Simon Ekpa's online broadcasts, arms supply allegations, and internal support networks. But the possibility that Biafra had gained access to real-time satellite imagery changed everything. It meant that Nigerian military operations could now be tracked in real time. It meant that any secret movement into strongholds like Orlu, Niue South, or Ebony's hinterlands could be watched from space without reliance on compromised local informants or intercepted communications. That changed the entire tactical equation. Within hours of the revelation, several high-level emergency meetings were reportedly convened. Sources close to the Nigerian security structure indicated that cybersecurity teams were tasked with determining whether the satellite had data linking capability to field operatives in southeastern Nigeria. One official reportedly asked the question that now hung over everyone. How long have they been watching us? As the panic spread internally, the media tried to play catch-up. International outlets such as Al Jazeera, Deutsche Welle, and Russia Today began piecing together the story, while BBC Africa remained unusually quiet, perhaps wary of aggravating diplomatic tensions with Nigeria. Meanwhile, online Biafran communities exploded with pride. Telegram groups and Facebook pages affiliated with the Biafran Liberation Army, indigenous people of Biafra, and ECPA's autopilot government shared celebratory messages. For them, this was proof that they were no longer fighting a losing battle from the shadows. They now had eyes in the sky. The psychological effect of this achievement cannot be overstated. For decades, Biafrans had lived under a siege of neglect, demonization, and erasure. Their narratives were routinely dismissed, their history distorted, and their aspirations ridiculed. But now, they had proof, cold, scientific, orbiting proof, that they could do what entire African states had failed to accomplish. In an era where data is more valuable than oil, the ability to gather independent satellite imagery marked the beginning of informational sovereignty. It allowed Biafra to monitor its territories, track potential violations of human rights, and most importantly, produce verifiable evidence when challenging Nigerian state actions at international forums. At the same time, questions began to surface regarding how the satellite was funded. Building and launching even a small sat is no cheap endeavor. Experts estimate that even with Russian subsidies, the cost could range between $2 million to $8 million, depending on the specifications and launch window. That kind of budget raised eyebrows, especially given that Biafra is a stateless movement. But those who had been watching the crypto transactions and diaspora fundraising activities knew that the movement had been collecting significant amounts through Bitcoin, Monero, and even Ethereum over the past 3 years. In fact, the autopilot government had built a parallel financial system, one that leveraged blockchain to avoid international banking surveillance and Nigerian sanctions. That system, which once served to fund relief efforts and ground operations, had now been weaponized in the most scientific way possible by funding access to space. This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.